Hello and welcome to the Useful Content Classroom. And today we are speaking with Michael Lee. Michael Lee is the director of 4 Point
Yeah.
Realtors. And Michael is here to share with us some of his knowledge and experience working within the real estate industry in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're going to have a conversation to try to get into the mind of the home buyer, the customer, the person who we are mainly concerned about. So, could you tell us a bit about your business and how long you've been doing what you've been doing?
I'm Michael Lee of 4 Point Realtors. I've been in the industry for 12, about 12 years or so. Typically we do the basic real estate business, which is we are contracted to market properties on vendors' behalf. So whether it be sales or whether it be rentals, whether it be residential, whether it be commercial, agricultural, any sort of property that can be sold, we are contracted to do so.
Right. So your main business is selling properties, yes?
Yeah, selling and leasing.
And leasing properties. What is your
Yeah.
main type of property to sell? Are you more in residential, commercial? What's the bulk of the properties you sell?
The bulk will be definitely residential.
Right. Do
Yeah,
you prefer residential over commercial for a particular reason, or that's just the way it happened?
it's just the way it goes. I don't know how, but I mean, I guess when you think about it, there are way more people that are interested in finding a home to live than finding a building to conduct business. So that'll always be predominantly the field that we specialize in.
Okay, great, wonderful. All right, so let's talk a bit about the customers you serve and try and get some insights into the things that are important to them. So the first question I want to ask you is, I know you've been in the business for you said 12 years. Within
Yeah.
that time, approximately how many properties that you think you've successfully closed on?
That is a difficult question to answer. Some years obviously are better than others, but on average, let's say about 15, between 15 and 20 per year.
15 to 20 per year. So,
Yeah,
it could easily at this point be in the hundreds. It could be.
yeah, at this stage. Needless to say, the most recent years have been significantly slower than the others.
And with that in mind, let's think about and talk about some of the things that customers are looking for in this current environment and what they have been talking to you
Mm,
about over the years based on your experience. So I know there are different stages in closing a property or in the process of real estate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a part where they're interested, and then when they qualify, then they come and they could view, and then after they view, then there's the part where it's the closing, and those are different stages. Would you say those are kind of the three broad stages when they're just kind of interested, they want to look at
yeah,
something that
roughly.
roughly? Okay.
Yeah,
And I know in each of those stages, that's a reflection in marketing, that's a reflection of what we call the buyer's journey. And
yeah,
and if it's a customer's journey, then it goes a little further into loyalty and being able to have repeat customers, which everybody wants. But let's talk about it as a buyer's journey, which is from not knowing who you are as Michael Lee to then buying a house from you, right? Um,
right.
and we kind of want to match what we talk about tonight to those stages. So, what are some of the things that the potential clients come to you and ask when they're first interested in getting a property? What are some of the popular questions?
Well, ideally, the most popular question, ironically, will be how do I go about purchasing this property? Believe it or not. I've discovered that a lot of people genuinely don't know the process. And it's actually a lot simpler than a lot of people are made to believe. And it's actually part of my mission to educate the public as per exactly how to go about purchasing a property. Because it seems to be this huge mountain, but it's actually a molehill. So I always tell clients, if you're interested in a property and purchasing a property, the very, very first thing that you should do is to get pre-approved. Now, what do I mean by being pre-approved? It means going to the financial institutions and basically inquiring how much are you willing to lend me to purchase a property.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's the very, very, very first step. Because outside of that, you're not going to know exactly how much you qualify for. You're not going to know what budget you're working with. and you're just going to be all out and about looking at property, not knowing whether you could afford it or not. Or in some situations, you might be able to afford something better, but you're probably limiting yourself to something because in your mind, you perceive that you won't be able to qualify for much. So the very first question that most people ask is, how do I start the process of purchasing a property?
All right. So when you are telling this person go and get pre-approved, do you think it's do you share that information with them or do you send them to someone to get that information?
No,
Like,
I definitely send them to someone because, my field is real estate. The bankers feel is, the mortgage officers feel is mortgages, right? So they will by far be better able to guide those clients accordingly as to how to go about getting pre-approved, the documents necessary, and any advice that might be needed to get them to where they want to be. Now, I could give them general information, but the confidential information, I leave that for the mortgage officers and they to take care of.
right, I hear you. And so, okay, so when somebody goes, they get pre-approved, that's done. They know they qualify. Let's just say they qualify for 1.8 million, and they know
Mm-hmm.
that that's the case. Is there anything else that you need or should they ask before they go start actually looking at houses? Are there any other questions that they usually ask?
Um, no, at that stage, once you're pre-approved, you're free to go and start looking at properties. In fact, the banks tell you go out there, find a property. Some of the banks actually refer them to us so we could assist in that field. I even know some mortgage officers that accompany them on the viewings. They're so invested, in making sure these clients get their property. So I would like to think that within the pre-approval stage, the mortgage officers would explain to them that they will need to have a certain amount for a deposit, whether it be, if they're financed 90%, then they will have to have a 10% deposit.
Mm,
Similarly, if they're being financed 95%, they'll have to have a 5% deposit. So the deposit is something that they're going to have on their own accord, and you cannot take a loan to get that deposit,
yes.
right? You have to have that cash saved. You also have to have funds set aside for closing costs. And that's something else that I'm pretty sure the mortgage officers explain to them. So once it is that they have the deposit and they have the closing cost. Now, in some instances, you can take a loan for the closing cost, but you can't take a loan for the deposit. In
Right.
some cases, right? Some banks will allow that, and they may
Mm,
merge the two.
mm,
Um, or you could have a family member gifted to you, in which case you'll have to have a letter from them showing that you're not obligated to repay them, right? So there's a bit of flexibility as far as the closing cost goes,
yeah. Right.
right? So once they have all of those things in place, then they come to me and we show them properties. To the best of our ability, we try to find something that match exactly what they're looking for.
Mm, okay. So it seems that customers who want to go ahead with the process, let's just suppose they're thinking about buying a house, they're at a stage of life that they feel it's time to invest in a property. Maybe they're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about raising a family, they're thinking about moving out of home, whatever the situation might be. They do a Google search, or maybe they go
Mm-hmm.
on social media, maybe they didn't have a friend who could recommend a realtor or somebody who's into real estate. You tell them, go check this out, go get your pre-approval and go to this lender or this person who would this bank who will give you the money for the mortgage. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems that having that knowledge or knowing more about that start of the process will probably
Mm-hmm.
give you like a leg up in being able to secure that particular buyer if like you had more understanding of what that part of the process looks like and were able to inform them on that. Wouldn't you agree that might be something that would be useful to a potential buyer?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And knowledge is power. Once you have the knowledge of how to go about doing something, that makes it significantly easier to get that done,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's all about educating the public, so that they will know the different steps that is needed to take in order to acquire a property. So definitely.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, good. So we start with the beginning. So that's the awareness stage. So we're talking
Right.
about the pre-approval. We're talking about, finding out how much you could spend on a property. And now we're at the stage where we're going to look at houses now, right? So
Right.
You all are, you know what they can afford 1.8 million, or they can afford 1 million, or they can afford 10 million. I don't know who could afford that, and why they would take a mortgage. But let's just suppose they are pre-approved, right? So now that you're going around looking for houses, what are some of the
Mhm.
things that general, like residential buyers within an average range? I know it will vastly differ depending on the person, but maybe there are some questions that come up over and over again. Can you identify for us some of those questions that come out of the looking phase?
I would say the questions more come from my side as the agent,
Mm-hmm.
because at that stage now I have to understand what your desire is. So,
Yes.
for example, if you have a $2 million budget, you might be interested in a gated community, as you know, and in comparison to just a regular community.
Mm-hmm.
You might be someone that is into entertainment, so you might want a large backyard. You might want somewhere where you could barbecue. You might
Mm-hmm.
want, or you might be someone with kids. You want to make sure they have a nice backyard that they could play in. You
Mm-hmm.
might like cooking. You want to make sure you have a big kitchen. So basically, we gather the information, the basic information as for what are your needs, what would you desire in a home. I mean, we all have a dream home in our minds. We all know what we would ideally like to have in a home, right? Even from a very young age, we have those dreams, we have those desires. It might change over time, but generally we know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say that the questions at that stage really comes from us, the agents, or it should come from us, the agents,
Mm-hmm.
to get a better understanding as to what they need, and then we go out to search for properties that could best fit the description in which they would have given us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So okay, so let me ask the question. What type of questions would
Mm-hmm.
you ask someone who is looking and is not sure about what they want to buy? How would you get that information out of them? What would you ask them?
Well, it's all about having a conversation. It's all about, getting comfortable with the client. So the same way we would have engaged a while ago, I would just similarly ask the same questions. I say, so what do you do on a weekend? How are your weekends like?
Mm,
What do you typically do for fun? What is your recreation? You like cooking? You like sleeping inside? Do you work from home? If you work from home, you're going to need an environment that is quiet, a community that is quiet,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
or you
mm-hmm,
might need an office space within your property. After COVID, we have a lot of clients that continue to work from home. So now the demand for an office space is going up as compared to before, where a standard 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom home would have sufficed. Now we have to look for a property that has an additional space that can be used as an office.
yeah.
The dynamics would have changed a bit. So we need to take all of these different things into consideration. And like I said, it's just through conversation, relaxed. I tend not to take things too seriously. I feel like you can be professional but be relaxed at the same time. So it's about having that conversation with them basically, and I'd ask them if the same thing we would have mentioned before. You have any kids? The kids go outside or they inside, they like to play video games, stuff like that. And you just
Mm-hmm,
kind of pry it out of them bit by bit through
mm-hmm,
conversation. Some things they would know out the gate, other things, yeah, through conversation, you would pick up on things that they might not even know that they want. You
mm-hmm,
know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
what I like to do when I pick up on those things is to keep it to myself and then surprise them with it when I find a property that suits them.
Ah, okay, that's it.
So it's always a nice thing to experience that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I am a real life example of this. When we got this particular house that I'm in right now, it was a standard three
Mm-hmm.
bedroom, and this room that I'm in right now was not here like 2 years ago. It's here a year ago now, because so we made some
Right.
renovations so that I can have this studio in house. So this is like
Mm-hmm.
my office space. So this was a
Right.
renovation, right?
Right. Right.
In fact, we gained 2 rooms out of the renovation. So I could relate to what you're saying in terms of like if I was looking for a house now, I would never
Mm-hmm.
just get a standard 3 bedroom. I would say,
Exactly.
I need to have an office space at this size because I want to do this in here. I might have equipment. I
Mm-hmm.
might want to record podcasts in this thing, and I would need that. I want to ask those questions. So what I'm getting from you is this. I'm getting from you is obviously asking questions is very important, right? Very,
Definitely.
very,
Yeah.
very critical. But I'm also getting that if you want to then now take the questions that the people answer, and you could use those answers, or you could use the things that you feel you need to ask as
Mhm.
as ways to put those general questions out into the public. So, for example, you brought up just now a family with
Mhm.
kids. So that may
Right.
be something that you could say publicly is like, if you're a homeowner who has kids and you're looking for a home, these are the type of things you want to look for. Is the backyard this size? You could say things like,
Right.
is it away from the all main roads? Or you could say,
Right.
does the balcony, is it safely secured? Or things of that nature. And you can then make kind of like
Is
content
there
and
a
things.
park nearby?
Is,
Those sort of different things.
is there a park nearby? That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a
You
park
know?
nearby? Um,
Yeah.
And so I'm getting a sense that even in you asking questions, there's opportunities to listen and then to take that and to
Correct.
make things that they could possible clients could relate to. Do you think that's a accurate statement?
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes being able to read between the lines as well is very, very important. Like I said, you want to be able to pick up on what they need, even though they don't mention it. Or sometimes they might not even be aware that they need it. But through the conversation and through picking up between the lines, you are able to say, you know what, due to these different things that you have going on,
Mhm.
this would work out really nicely for you. For example, let me just see if I could get something. Um, the parents are really into fitness, right? And they have kids, and because they have very young kids, they're unable to go to the gym as regular and whatnot, whatnot. So their health is deteriorating and their ability to exercise is depleting, right? So in between that now, you can come up with if it has a space to the back of the property that is covered, that is already tiled, etc., like a large back porch. Instead of utilizing that as a back porch, you could now turn that into a home gym, you know, where
Mm,
you can exercise at home and still be with the kids. Something like that. I'm trying to grasp
yeah.
at straws here to create an example, but
Hmm.
it really boils down to reading between the lines and providing things that they need that they didn't realize that they need.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I wish I had one of those right now at home, Jen. That'd be so nice. Have a little
I myself.
backyard. I wish I had one of those. That would be nice. And so that might be something else that if somebody else like myself, maybe not me, were buying a house, they would say, hey, I would be really like to find out. Like for example, you could make as a realtor, you can make content about what are some of the ways you could utilize your home gym, or these are
Yeah,
the best. This is the best way to outfit your home gym, and so you can kind of tie it to something that's real. Like somebody might want something like that, or maybe there's some people who are they don't like plants at all, and then there's some people who are really into gardening. So
correct.
you
That's
might
another
talk
thing.
you might talk about, hey, this has nice grounds to do your landscaping,
Correct.
or
Correct.
or
Hmm.
somebody might say, like for example, I don't want to take care of any plants, I kill all my plants, so give me a whole
Yes.
concrete yard, right? And so you
Correct. And
can
you wouldn't believe how often those two things actually come up.
really.
Plant lovers versus anti-plant lovers, I guess. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
It actually
Hmm.
comes up regularly. Yeah.
And so if there's something that comes up regularly, I would take that. I would say, well, let's make some content about that. Are you a plant
Yeah.
lover?
Yeah.
This is the type of properties you have to look for. Are you somebody
Correct.
who is not interested in taking care of plants? And so like my friend and I,
Hmm.
we are both into plants, but for a long
Right.
time I was into like the ornamental plants, like you have your
Hmm.
crotons and your califers, but he was against that. He would say, if it don't make fruit, I don't want it in my yard. And
Uh,
so we were he's my real good friend, so we used to
yeah,
pick on each other about it and different things. I know he's coming around, but that could be a thing too, where somebody says, I want a big yard because I want a mango tree.
correct,
Would you say that's
correct.
something
Now
that
that
would
brings up
happen?
another point. Definitely, that brings up another point as well. Are you an outdoors person? If you're
Mm-hmm.
not an outdoors person and you don't really care for the maintenance of outdoors, then you might want to look at a townhouse that doesn't
Right.
really have much yard space. And most townhouses are in gated communities, so you'll have a maintenance fee. You don't have any maintaining to do of the external of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different people who might prefer to have the yard space for the mango tree, the plum tree, the cherry tree, and all those different things. I'm definitely one of those. because I'm an outdoors kind of person. Even if we're
Mhm.
hanging out, I prefer to be outside than inside. So I'm
Right.
definitely one of those. But then there'll be opposite to me that prefer to be inside. And you don't ever see them at all outside, So they
Mhm.
might prefer something like a townhouse, like a condo, where they have zero to little maintenance to do, you know?
Mhm.
So that's another point that could come out of that.
You know what's just occurring to me as you're talking there? Well, the thing that we're discussing now, and it's just now occurring to me that what we're actually discussing is the types of home buyers. Like we're putting home buyers into categories, and
Right.
maybe categories based on their preference. So, are you a plant person home buyer? Are you a fitness home buyer? Are you don't want to do any maintenance for yourself home buyer?
Mhm.
And then we can then now make categories for
Yeah,
ourselves, and then we could say, let me now create some type
correct.
of content to address the needs of these particular types of home buyers, considering that how you just said just now that
Mhm.
that whole plant versus no plant is something that comes up often. You might want to say, let me just do a series on plant
Mhm.
versus no plant,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you can make a ton of content around that. That may be a thing you might want to do. Yeah, you think that might be viable?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah. Look, in 2023, anything could be content, huh? Not trying
Mm-hmm.
to water it down, but once you're creative enough, anything could be content. You can make content on, do I want a two-car garage or a single car garage? Do I
Mm-hmm.
want um, those like the sinks in the kitchen, you could have the two sides or you could have the single sink.
Yes.
That's actually a thing. For
Mm-mm-mm.
example, I prefer the double sink because it makes it easier to wash the dishes. You have all the dirty one on one side, you rinse it out on the other side, as
Yes.
compared to just a single sink. That
Yes.
can be content. So once you're creative enough, you could never run out of content. It doesn't always have to be centered around the serious stuff like, okay, getting pre-approved and closing costs and discussing all these different things. That's excellent content, yes. But if you want longevity, then you're definitely going to want to look at those little subtle things as well. Probably try to put a comedic spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it light. I'm all about keeping information light and easy to understand. That's my aim. That's always been my aim.
Right. That's good. That's good. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So you have some edutainment inside of there, right? Educating while entertaining.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In the
Yeah.
mix, yeah.
In the mix. All right. So the
Correct.
last thing I wanted to us to talk about